I knew I needed to get a divorce, and I needed money to get a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went down to the credit union, and I applied for a loan. And then one kind of cold fall day, they said, come down about your loan. So I walked from the federal building down to the credit union, and they said, we're not going to give you a loan. Because I had no
credit history.
I was chief deputy at the federal courts, but everything was in Jim's name.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't get any money.
So it's like you couldn't afford your own divorce.
Mm-mm.
Welcome to the East Anchorage Book Club. I'm your host, Andrew Gray. The purpose of this podcast is to tell the stories of Alaskans of interest and importance. Today, our guest is Phyllis Rhodes, former executive director of Identity, the Anchorage-based nonprofit that seeks to advance Alaska's LGBTQIA2S+ community. Born in 1937, Ms. Rhodes spent her youth in Amarillo, Texas. She moved to Anchorage in 1964 with her then husband because she wanted a better future for her daughters. Although she'd known she was a lesbian since childhood, Phyllis was 62 years old before she began living openly. Despite that late start, the Alaska LGBTQ community is forever indebted to Phyllis Rhodes for her incredible work to advance our community. Phyllis Rhodes, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
Where were you born?
I was actually born in Mesa, Arizona, but I actually was there for a month before I was taken to Amarillo, Texas, where I was raised, basically.
And you stayed there? You went to Amarillo High School?
Yes, I did. And
then you went to college not too far away?
I actually went to a community college there and got a few hours in. We'll talk about college education. Might as well do it now.
Okay.
People assume that I'm college educated. I'm not. I'm life educated.
How did you end up in Alaska?
I had married somebody I had met in high school, lost contact with, and we didn't even know each other in high school. But that was graduated in 1955, and this would have been probably 5-6 years later. And I went to fill my car with gas, and there was somebody we got to talking. Oh, yeah, I remember you in so-and-so class. Started dating, and I married him. And he had just finished undergraduate, and he was going to go to law school.
So this was like early 60s?
This was early 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So we went with him to Austin, Texas, and he finished law school there, and he didn't want to practice law in Texas. He wanted to come to Alaska. And I was very non-committal about that until just as his last year of law school, I had a little girl, a baby girl. And the first thing I said when they said, you have a daughter, I said, I'm going to go to Alaska. Because I thought that would be a much better place to raise daughters than any place in Texas.
What was the problem with raising daughters in Texas?
I think it was just a very difficult place for women because there was that general, at that time, keep them barefoot and pregnant, and they can't be anything except a school teacher or a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, that's not how I want to raise my daughter.
And did Alaska prove to be what you expected?
Oh, boy, did it. So I came up here with him.
And did y'all come to Anchorage?
Mm-hmm. Came to Anchorage. He finally got a job. We came without jobs. He got a job as a law clerk for a local attorney. And I realized I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. After all, I did marry an attorney.
Mm-hmm.
Within a month, we knew I had to go to work. And so we found childcare.
You needed to go to work for your sanity?
No.
Or for money? You didn't have enough money?
Didn't have money.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a job with, and I did that day, went to lots of offices. I'd been in the federal government for several years already. And I went office to office, and 2 people wanted to hire me, and I took the one that had the first payday.
Because you needed the money that bad.
I needed the money.
And so what'd you do?
I went to work for an organization that no longer exists It was called the Federal Field Committee for Development Planning in Alaska. Their main job at that time, right after the earthquake, was to coordinate the efforts of all the federal agencies in Alaska to recovery from the earthquake. That was in '64.
Okay, so y'all got here right after the earthquake.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And so I went to work for them, and they did all their coordination, and they were almost reaching their sundown at the same time that the native claims came up. And so they were tabbed to create a basis on which to base a native claims settlement.
Mm-hmm.
And we created a huge book with tons of research called Alaska Natives in the Land.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked on that and finished it, and it was used as a basis for the original Native Claims Act settlement project. So I was really happy to do that. And of course, once that was done, they also then really had a sundown. So I went looking for another job and knocking on doors, and I went to work in the U.S. Attorney's Office. And I worked there until when? So I went to work for the court, early 70s. The boss in the U.S. attorney, since I was kind of a new person there, didn't want to give me what the job paid because there were other people who'd been there longer, and those women didn't think I should have the higher paying job. Mm-hmm. And so I went down the hall one day to file a paper with the federal court, and the clerk of court said, "No, anybody that wants a job, so-and-so is retiring." I said, "I'll take it." And that's how I got in the courts, almost by accident. Started at base level docketing clerk and stayed there and worked my way up to clerk of court.
And what does the clerk of court do?
They're the administrator for the courts. They do everything. I mean, everything. Everything from facilities to juries, making sure that all the systems work, upgrading. We didn't even have computers then, so we started doing computers. Just making sure that everything that a judge needs, he has. Mm-hmm. His staff, his courtroom, his jury, keeping track of all the documents that are filed in all the cases. It was a pretty responsible job.
And you stayed there until you retired?
I did.
And you were retired in 2000?
I retired in December 1995, January 96.
Gotcha.
Right in there.
Did you have any other children?
Yes, I did. I had another daughter.
And you stayed married to your husband?
I actually, we divorced in early 80s. He was an attorney here in town, very successful with his firm. I was very unhappy. I could no longer put aside the fact that I was a lesbian. He drank too much, and I said, well, maybe I could divorce him because of that. Mm-hmm. That wasn't really it. I knew who I was, and I divorced him, and while I was still working at federal court.
So you divorced him in the early 80s. You were around 48 years old. But you didn't really come out of the closet. So it was more...
It was difficult. I felt that federal court was not a place to come out. Mm-hmm. And I did not come out while I was still a clerk of court. I was in a very secretive relationship while I worked there. Maybe more than one, but I give it a big secret. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really even start to come out publicly until I retired.
And did your daughters know?
My daughter Ann is a lesbian, and my daughter Emily is a very straight Republican. I'm sorry to say, we do not discuss politics.
Well, I have a mother who's a very Republican mother, so I know that feeling of not being able to discuss politics with your close family.
We just don't do that.
Mhm.
But I love both my daughters, but Anne is here in town.
Mhm.
I see her at least once a week. We talk on the phone, and she's really a little carbon copy of me.
Well, right before we got started, you said that you came from 3 generations of lesbians. Can you
I think
explain that?
I think I'm in the middle. My birth mother and my adoptive mother had been roommates for 10 years. And I remember my foster mother telling me that how much she had loved my mother, who was Marie.
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe that they had a lesbian relationship.
So I guess tell us a little bit about that. So I guess your parents got a divorce.
My parents actually, my mother died right after childbirth.
Oh.
And when she realized that was what she was going to die, she called her ex-roommate back in Texas to come and get me, rather than my dad taking me.
Gotcha.
Because he didn't feel that he could, being depression, single dad.
Mm-hmm.
So
you went to live with Marie?
I did. No, I went to live with Florence. Marie was my mom.
Oh, sorry. Gotcha.
Marie was my mother.
So
she died. I was born she didn't live a month. I was born the 28th of April.
1937.
And she died May the 20th of that same year. And so off to Texas we went with Florence. She was a single woman. And my dad's parents from Oklahoma decided they would come over and claim me. What they really wanted was some money, but they wanted to claim me. And so they filed a habeas corpus to get my body. And strange things happened then. While that was going on, it didn't go on long. Went on for if you're only in court for a couple of weeks. But they actually put me in an orphanage for 2 weeks while they did this thing in court. And so they're in court, and they're having their arguments, and they take a recess. And Florence goes back, and she knows the judge, and she goes back to chambers. The Lord knows what happened back there. But he came back, dismissed their habeas corpus claim, and said that she could adopt me.
Wow, that's really lucky.
And she was the first single woman in Texas allowed to adopt.
Wow, how old were you then?
Probably 2 or 3.
Oh, okay, so you don't remember going to orphanage or anything like that? And did you ever have a relationship with your paternal grandparents?
No. I finally met them when I was in my late 20s.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even meet my dad until I was in my 20s.
Did you get along with him? I mean,
he was not my dad. He was an acquaintance.
Mm-hmm.
He was a strange person. All the time after my mom died, he remarried a woman,
mm-hmm.
but he kept a picture of my mom on their dresser the whole time.
Oh, wow.
Weird guy.
Mm-hmm. You were raised by Florence.
I was.
And you consider her your mom.
She was the one who raised me.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's really strange. She always reminded me that she had me because of a deathbed promise.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think she really wanted children.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think she was necessarily a really good mom. She felt her responsibilities were to clothe me, feed me, and educate me through high school.
Mm-hmm. So just provide you with the things to keep you alive, basically.
Right. But she was being single. She had always been somebody who had a lot of fun being single,
mm-hmm.
and that did not change.
She kept having fun being
mm-hmm.
single.
Yes. And it wasn't until, I guess I started to call her boyfriend's daddy, and she married one of them.
Mm-hmm.
That was not a good marriage. They divorced, and she didn't remarry again until I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd been a cowboy, and he was nice company, and I liked him as a stepdad
mm-hmm.
or a foster dad.
Mm-hmm.
And then my dad, after my mother died, married again to a woman who had children. She had a daughter and 3 sons. He only would let her keep the daughter.
Wow.
Made her give the sons up. And then they had two more children.
Did you have a relationship with those kids?
I've met everybody.
Mm-hmm.
There was no close relationship except for the one older stepsister.
To get back to your marriage, did you know you were a lesbian when you got married to your husband?
Yes, I did. I'd been in one relationship, and I knew that I was.
In Amarillo.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But all my friends were getting married, and I just felt like probably people I worked with. I was working with civil service in Amarillo at the Air Force Base, and everybody said, "Well, you better marry. You're very strong-minded. You better marry a strong man." So I met Jim again. He'd just gotten out of the Marines. He's tougher than a Marine, so and he was going to be a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to get married, might as well marry a lawyer. That's a good life. We went to Alaska. He got a job here. I started working here in my own career. In the early '80s, living the life I was having to lead, I was actually diagnosed as suicidal. And I knew that I needed to get some counseling, and was able to recognize, yes, I was a lesbian.
Did the counselor help you with that?
Yes.
So you got lucky and got a good counselor.
A very good counselor. Very good counselor. And
so early 80s, Anchorage,
mm-hmm.
counselor said,
Mm-hmm.
well, you're a lesbian.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah. She said, she gave me a business card on the back. She wrote, "This is your get out of jail card."
So did you have a amicable divorce?
And, oh, heavens, no.
It was bad.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. I actually had to get a TRO to get him out of the house.
What's a restraining
order?
Restraining order.
Yeah, there's so many side stories that get me involved in things. I needed to get a divorce, and I needed money to get a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went down to the credit union and I applied for a loan. And then one kind of cold fall day, they said, "Come down about your loan." So I walked from the federal building down to the credit union, and they said, "We're not going to give you a loan," because I had no
credit history.
I was chief deputy at the federal courts, but everything was in Jim's name. Mm-hmm. So I couldn't get any money.
So it's like you couldn't afford your own divorce.
Mm-mm. So I started getting, when I would buy groceries, I'd get cash until I had enough to pay $3,000 was all it took at that time to get an attorney. So we filed for divorce, really ticked him off. And the first thing he did was he finally said, "Okay, if this is going to happen, well, we're going to give this asset we're going to sell this to my law partner here and this to my other law partner." And so I told my attorney that he's talking about how he's going to divide up the assets to his law partners. And so he got the first order that said, "You may not talk to her about any assets." And he really got angry.
Well, because he was a lawyer. So he kind of knew you were getting good advice, probably, or that he wasn't going to be able to
the first thing
manipulate the situation.
When of course the court ordered mediation, and we walked into mediation. He came in by himself. I came in with my attorney, and there was probably a magistrate judge. The first question he asked, "How did you get the money to hire him?" That's the first question he asked. How'd you get the money to hire him? And then the other thing very memorable that my attorney said to the presiding officer, "This is an abused woman." And I had never considered myself abused. It was not physical abuse.
It was emotional. Yeah. So it seems like that question was the implication that you had somehow stolen the money from him to pay for the divorce?
No, not that I'd stolen it. He just wondered how I got it because he tried not to let me have any.
Right.
So since I could write checks for groceries and write extra for cash, that's what I had done.
Well, were your paychecks going into a joint account?
Yes, they were. Yeah.
Your daughters, I assume, were in their 20s, early 20s?
At that time, they were not. They were both still in high school. At least Emily was.
Mm-hmm.
They were still in high school.
And you got custody?
I got custody, and I got the house because the house was close to Service High School. I got custody. He got visitation. Yeah.
Did he maintain a good relationship with his daughters?
Only with Emily, because she thought she was also rather conservative at that time.
And he was conservative?
He was conservative. When Anne let it be known to me that she was a lesbian, I said, and that was after the divorce, I said, don't tell your dad. Don't tell your dad.
And did your husband know about you?
No, he suspected.
Mm-hmm.
He thought his term was feminazi.
He called you a feminazi?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So when Anne came out, you said, don't tell your dad.
Don't tell your dad, but she did, and so that kind of sealed their relationship.
And eventually, I mean, did you tell him? Did he find out about you? Or
I think he always presumed.
Mm-hmm.
He never said that he knew.
Mm-hmm. So you came out the closet publicly after
I retired.
Mm-hmm. In 95, 96.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of quiet at that time. Just a little bit. Was it really? It kind of was. It was very gradual.
Mm-hmm.
It was gradual for a few months. Then all of a sudden, I came out like gangbusters. Except, no exceptions to it. What happened was the thing I do like to tell this story. I was a bit of an introvert from birth to retirement from the courts. Retirement from the courts, I came out, and that's where I think life really began. I did a total 180. I became an extrovert. I became very out and proud everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of considered that the life that I love
Mm-hmm.
started when I came out.
It
hadn't been me before.
I want to ask a little bit about that period from after the divorce until then, when you were having these secret relationships. Yes. I mean, that was a specific moment in gay history. I mean, HIV, AIDS was happening. Yeah. It was in the news. There was, lots of gay men dying everywhere. Were you identifying with that as part of the LGBTQ experience personally, or was it something where it's like you had your own secret life over here?
I had my own secret life at that time. Not that I wasn't supportive. I would go secretly to events, very furtively to events, mm-hmm. but it was mostly my coming out and dating and being in relationships and not letting anybody know about it.
Happy relationships?
Yes. Even at that time, there was a new organization forming that I joined and became active in. It was called the Organization for Private Lesbians.
The Organization for Private Lesbians?
It was called Opal.
Opal.
And it was people who were lawyers, who were doctors, who were teachers, who were principals, who were in the military.
Who felt like they just couldn't.
They could not.
They couldn't be out.
It was a very secret organization.
I was going to ask, how did you meet the women that you were seeing?
My counselor put me in touch with them.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, but it was really, and you had.
So your counselor was kind of like a matchmaker.
To the gay community. Yes, she was.
And you only dated women who were also very secretive.
Absolutely.
Are you still friends with any of them today?
Yes, I am.
So I interviewed Vic Carlson last month, retired judge, and I didn't have the courage to ask him this question that I'm about to ask you, which is, and I hinted around it, but you came out fully when you were 60, 62.
Yeah.
And for me, as someone who came out as a teenager, I just feel like you missed so much.
We did. That's why I'm telling you that my life didn't start until I came out. This was not that period of being a child, and I'm telling you, I knew when I was a child. But being a child, going to school, going to high school, all of that, I wasn't me. I was never me in there. Mm-hmm. When I finally really came out, then I could be me.
I'm sure it was a freeing, exciting moment to finally be yourself and to be out and be open.
It was.
Do you have regret about those lost years?
I don't look back. That's I have many sayings that I live by. That's one of them. Don't look back. There's nothing you can do about it. I will say this about it, which is hard. I finally came to like, this happens way through life, that you really like who you are. And everything that happened to me made me who I am. So no, I wouldn't change any of it.
Mm. Well, when you came out like gangbusters, let's talk about that. It wasn't long before you got involved at Identity.
I did. And
for those who don't know, Identity is the Anchorage-based LGBTQ organization. The community center right now has a clinic, has been around since the 70s.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Actually, probably maybe even the 60s it was around. I don't have the dates on that off the top of my head. But it was very exciting to come out. I did it kind of gradually. I was involved in this group called Opal, and Identity had gotten a grant to open a community center. And to do that, they were getting people from all of the organizations, LGBT organizations in Alaska, to be a part of this committee to decide what this community center would look like and get it started. And I was asked to be on that committee on behalf of Opal. So that's how I got involved.
So you're like the Opal representative.
The lesbian representative. Yes. Opal. So that was that one. And I got involved with that. And I was starting then to really come out and be involved with Opal. Everything had been secret. And then we did open the community center, and I really wasn't doing anything else. I had retired. I had become a mediator for a while, and then I got breast cancer, so I just quit everything. And getting back on this committee was the first thing I did publicly of any kind of activity. Mm-hmm. And we got the center going, and I started volunteering there. And I volunteered more and more, and they had some administrative people who left, and pretty soon the only person left to be paid was the bookkeeper, and there had been an ED who had resigned in 2005, and I said, don't hire anybody right now, just let me take over and do the admin stuff. So I did that, and then they made me gave me the title of executive director.
So the previous executive director, had that been a paid position?
Yes, it was.
So they had this executive director that was a paid position, and then you volunteered basically to take over that work pro bono.
Yes.
And you continued doing it for free?
Till 2014.
Wow.
So I think it was 2005 that she resigned. And so I took over then, and who knows where in there they made me the ED. So
what was your experience like?
As the ED, I loved it. It was wonderful. I got to meet a lot of people, and Identity at that time wasn't well known. I would say in the community at large. But it wasn't even really well known among the gays and lesbians and bis and trans. So my goal was to let them be known, and I would go to every possible community meeting of all the nonprofits in town, and I'd be the one who would step and say, "I'm with Identity, and we provide programs and support for lesbians, gays, bis, and transgender individuals. That was my spiel. Everywhere, all over town. And so we got to be known. And I'd be on their committees. I'd do everything I can to make us known. And it really paid off.
And well, thank you for doing that.
That was my goal. That's what I did.
Did you get any negative feedback during that period?
I don't think I did. I don't think that I did.
And I was going to ask about that, about when you came out like gangbusters and really lived openly. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people don't do that because they have this fear of the negative repercussions. And I'm just curious if you had any negative repercussions.
I always expected it. Even that when I came out to my ex-chief judge, Judge Holland, when I came out to him, mm-hmm. he said, "What have you been doing?" Well, I've been volunteering as an executive director for this little nonprofit called Identity. Oh, what do they do? And then I would tell him. And there was never any negative, mm-hmm. anything. I always expected it. The only time I ever had any negative response was from my now wife's brother when I first met him. It was very negative. But
because he didn't know his sister was gay, or
maybe he thought I'm 20 years her senior.
Oh,
that could have been it. And I think she'd only been in a couple of relationships, and he was hoping that she wouldn't be.
Mm.
But he was quite rude. But now I'm the golden girl. I take care of my wife.
How long have y'all been together?
Over 30 years.
Wow. And how did y'all meet?
She came to my office to apply for a part-time job. It was going to be a 30-day part-time job. And I was leaving. The minute she walked in the office to be interviewed, under my breath, I said, "Oh, shit." But she was going to, and I was leaving for 30 days to go to France and Italy and Greece. So it didn't matter. I got back.
And when you said that, I mean, was it because you just knew love at first sight?
It wasn't love. It was an attraction. Mm-hmm. It was a definite attraction. And I didn't even know if she was lesbian. Mm-hmm. But she was.
Luckily for you.
Luckily for me. When I came back from that trip, my boss said, "Pam did a really excellent job. I want you to hire her full time." So I did. And so we met at work. But and since I was attracted to her for I don't know, a year and a half or so, I totally ignored her. She wondered later if I was why I didn't like her, because I wouldn't even acknowledge her.
Because you were being professional.
Yes.
While you were executive director of Identity, 2009 happened, which was the summer of hate, where the assembly was trying to pass an equal rights ordinance.
You're going to make me cry. That was such a horrible time. That was such a horrible time. You said, "Do you ever feel a negative response?" That was it.
Explain to our listeners, what happened that year and what it was like in the city at that time.
We were trying to get a municipal ordinance for equality for gays, lesbians, bis, and trans. And that had to go through the assembly. And so the assembly had to have hearings, public hearings. And this was a very hot topic. It led, I will tell you, by the Anchorage Baptist Temple, who I will say has since changed their name. Believe me, it still smells the same. They changed their name to Mountain Church something, but they're still the very same people with the very same hate. I don't know how they have time to do church work and hate gays so much.
Well, and I think...
I'm sorry, I got
No. I mean, because Jerry Prevost, who was the former head of Anchorage Baptist Temple, I mean, he is on the record as saying very specifically that homosexuality is against God's will. Like very, very openly hostile.
Yes. Very openly hostile. And so they actually led the battle on their side to try to make sure that this did not pass. And they even bused people in from Matanuska Valley, which is not part of our municipality, to come in and testify. There were so many people lined up to testify. They had extra sessions to hear testimony. I will say I could not believe some of the church ladies I could not believe the filth that came out of their mouth. And I guess I remember one woman saying, and I probably came up out of my seat to go for her throat. Somebody stopped me. They're just the bottom of the barrel. So
that's what she said.
Yes, at the bottom of the barrel. And they said some other really nasty things that I won't even repeat. They were so bad. And I remember one night after that, I went by myself, and I got to my car and I drove to the edge of the parking lot and I sat there and sobbed. I felt like I had been beaten. I had been flogged with the cat of nine tails. Oh, I felt so beat up. That was a really hard time for all of us. And I felt I felt a great affinity for people in our community who had the nerve to go up and especially the people who were trans, because they were saying pretty bad things about them. And a lot of these people had never come out before, and they came and testified. So,
did you testify?
Oh, you bet I did. You bet I did.
Do you remember the response to your testimony?
It's hard to judge response to any testimony. The chair of the assembly tried to keep it down, but there were more derogatory raspberries from the people who didn't want us to have equal rights.
In 2015, it passed. It didn't, 2009, it passed the assembly, but the mayor, who was Dan Sullivan, the mayor, he vetoed it, and they didn't have enough to override. But they did pass it in 2015.
I was not as involved in that publicly, but I think that I played a very significant part in that. There was a committee that nobody really knew about. It was an organization for equality that would have been statewide. And I almost didn't join it because it involved, I'm always afraid of being used. It involved members of the Church Latter-day Saints. It involved, and they were the leaders, it involved representative from the bishop from the Catholic Church. It involved people from other organizations, churches, 4As, the Episcopal, they have an organization called Christians for Equality. They were on it.
So it was a very diverse, unusual, unexpected coalition.
And somebody from the ACLU. And we were not probably recognized by anybody. We worked under the radar. We worked, and we had a transgender woman on there, and we actually came up. We were getting very close. And I couldn't even, I was actually battling the ACLU a little bit, making some concessions to get this. And we even had...
Because the ACLU didn't want to make any concessions?
No concessions. And I said, so why not let a church say, you cannot have a gay marriage in our church? Why not let them say that?
Right.
And
so let's get equal protection. And if a church doesn't want to do a gay marriage, well, that's probably not a place where a lot of gay people want to get married anyway.
But that was, they just wouldn't give on that. They should not have any
ability to discriminate.
Right. And we were that close. And we even had meetings with some senators and representatives from Juneau.
Mm-hmm.
And we had, in one of our meetings, we had knee to knee. We had a bishop and a transgender woman at one of our meetings sitting like this, right knee to knee. It was great. We were making great progress. And politics happened. We kind of quietly disbanded. One of the members became the Attorney General. Treg was on our committee.
Treg Taylor was on your committee?
He was. Can you believe that? Jody, his wife, I think, was more sincerely into it than he was.
That's so interesting because
he has taken such a different.
Yeah, I know. I was going to
now.
say because I mean, for our listeners, because this equal rights protection passed in Anchorage in 2015, LGBTQ folks are protected in the municipality from this sort of discrimination, which, you know, it's roughly half the population of Alaska is protected because the municipality has these protections. But Neil Gorsuch, who's the U.S. Supreme Court Justice, was the author of the opinion, Bostock, which happened a few years ago, which basically provided these protections nationwide for employment, government accommodations, housing, these sort of basic protections that you would assume you can't discriminate against somebody because of who they are. Treg Taylor, in August 2022, gave specific instructions to the Alaska Human Rights Commission to only apply Bostock protections to employment. And this was sort of a secret thing that wasn't widely publicized. And so it's interesting. And, you know, I've had a meeting with the Attorney General, and he's told me that he supports equal protections for LGBTQ people, but that he didn't feel that this was the way to go about it, that we needed to have legislation. And we have House Bill 99, sponsored by Representative Jenny Armstrong, which would basically do for Alaska what that equal rights ordinance did for the municipality. However, the Attorney General and the Governor have never spoken out in support of that legislation. They say that they don't come out in support of specific legislation, which, I mean, that doesn't ring true.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you that but the part though that we did play that I am really proud of in the 2015, we did convince the Mormons and the Catholics to not take a position, do not come out against this. Mm-hmm. And I think that played a big part in it passing.
Huge part.
So, and that was the one thing that we feel that us liberals feel that we really did help. Mm-hmm. Nobody knew it, but we're the ones who convinced them through the bishop, through the higher ups in the Latter-day Saints, not to take a position. Don't come out against it. Mm-hmm. And they didn't. And I think that's one of the reasons it passed.
Another issue that came up during that debate was Bill Evans, who was a Republican representing South Anchorage, who ultimately voted for it. There had been discussion of excluding trans from that ordinance. And there was pressure to remove protections for trans, to have it just be LGB, not T. And there was a lot of pressure on him to make that happen. But he was successfully lobbied that was the wrong thing to do. And he voted for protections for trans. Some would argue, and that's why he was a one-term member of the assembly. But I don't know if you remember that at all. Any pressure to not include trans in that protection?
I just remember that they came to our to the LGBT community at large and said, now we can get this passed much easier if you don't include trans. And we said, no. There are still a few out there that are lesbians and gays who do not understand trans, do not support it. Mm-hmm. But as a whole, we do. Mm-hmm. And we said, no, we will not throw them under the bus. It has to go, it has to include the trans. It has to include the trans.
Well, I'll tell you straight up, in the hallways of Juneau, I have had Republican legislators say, you guys would be fine if you would just drop trans. I mean, that's happening in 2023. That there's this, and when you look at the governor's bill, House Bill 105, people call it the Don't Say Gay bill, like Ron DeSantis is from Florida. But it's the Don't Be Trans bill. It's about pronouns. It's about the name of your choice. It's about, that bill is very explicitly about non-binary trans people. It's not really about the LGBT people. And I 100% will oppose that bill with every fiber of my being.
I will tell you that when I came out, I told you I was elated. I was so happy. The only people I've ever seen who are happier than I was were individuals who have made the transition. Mm-hmm. They are the happiest, excited, elated people there are. Like I did, you get to be who you are. Mm-hmm. You get to be who you know you are. What did I just read this week? Sex is not between your legs, it's between your ears. Mm-hmm. Your gender. Mm-hmm. Your gender is not between your legs, it's between your ears.
Last question we ask everybody is if there's a book that they would recommend to our listeners, a TV show, a movie, something that you want all of our listeners to experience. It doesn't have to be about the topic at hand.
Not that I can think of, really. I can't think of any single book, movie, TV, anything that has specifically helped me along my journey.
Oh, well, it doesn't have to. It could just be something that you watched recently that you liked or something you read recently that you liked.
No, okay. I don't think so. I read a lot. I'm reading a lot more now. Mm-hmm. I will say my wife now has some dementia, and she entertains herself a lot by watching YouTube on her smartphone, which gives me a lot more time to read. So I'm reading more now.
I'm so sorry. I mean, she's 20 years younger than you.
Yes. Yeah.
That must be a challenge.
Because we thought, when we got together, that being 20 years her senior, that she'd be the one scraping the oatmeal off my chin.
Right.
But eventually I'll be scraping the oatmeal off of her chin. And she was an endurance athlete, and she doesn't even run outside anymore. She was run 100 miles, but now she doesn't run at all.
Because she'll get lost?
No, she will not get lost. That is so ingrained in her. Every trail in the Chugach is so ingrained in her that it's fear of tripping. She'll be losing some muscle, some nerve stuff, and she's afraid of tripping. Mm-hmm. But when her friends, she has a great bunch of running buddies that she's always had. They're all heterosexual, all of them. I think this bunch is. And they still admire and love her, so they get together at least once a week, sometimes more, and they go out for a hike. Mm-hmm. They're all runners. They go for a hike, take him. And Pam leads because she knows the trails, so they let her lead. So she's not going to get lost.
Oh. Well, I'm so sorry, but she's so lucky to have you, and we are so lucky to have had you, Phyllis Rhodes. I mean, thank you so much for your work.
People say thank you for you. I didn't set out to do anything, but somehow it happened during my watch.
Thank you to Maya Narang for making this podcast listenable, and thank you to you, our listeners. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and review us. To contact me, email eastanchoragebookclub@gmail.com. That's East Anchorage Book Club, all one word, @gmail.com.